The top story is the news that Donald Trump is accused in the Epstein files and that his government is hiding the very Epstein files about it. NPR reporting that bombshell heading into the State of the Union, where President Trump faced the long shadow of Jeffrey Epstein. Indeed, it was one of these split-screen moments, depending on how you took in the State of the Union, because as I'm showing you right here in these photos, about a dozen Epstein survivors attended, and others showed their support for the survivors and transparency in various ways, including visible stickers and other insignia. Trump didn't even acknowledge them, and he didn't address what his administration is doing on this front or the big vote. Trump is hiding the files. That's according to credible, independent reporting. Trump is hiding the files, according to lawmakers in both parties who have actually gone in to review them, the ones that they did release. And while politicos, people who follow this and say, okay, but isn't it obvious that Donald Trump would duck the issue in his speech because it's a weakness, even if it was the longest State of the Union ever, so he had time to hit all kinds of topics? But politically, people might say, why bring up your own weakness in the speech? But think about this tonight. His refusal to address the Epstein topic is still a total reversal from his recent campaign where Donald Trump ran on Epstein justice and transparency. He told interested MAGA podcasters more than once he would release the files, get to the bottom of this. I know that some people think it is cool to sound unexcited or kind of surprised and cynically just down with everything that's happening these days, but this is, if you look at the actual facts, a total reversal. And he didn't release the files, as he told those podcasters. He spent last year fighting it. Then he lost in Congress, which forced him to release millions under the new law. And yet he's still hiding the ones that implicate him, according to multiple reports. So Trump has dragged out this issue. He has actually made it last, angering MAGA supporters and Epstein victims alike. At this rate, Donald Trump's approach could ensure the Epstein issue haunts him through the rest of this year into the midterms, or maybe the rest of this last Trump term. So on substance, that's a betrayal of his promises. And on the politics, it is at a minimum odd, noticeably odd, and hurts his Republican Party. Unless you reason that maybe full transparency would hurt Trump even more. Remember, it's not so long ago that Trump was publicly and angrily denying even sending Epstein a birthday greeting, however, quote, bawdy or illicit, it's a card. He sued Fox News' sister outlet, The Journal, for even reporting that. And then I want to remind you what came after that. That might have just gone away, but then we got the birthday greeting here from an earlier file released via Congress that would corroborate the story. Trump has not dropped the lawsuit, which looks likely to lose. Trump likely to lose it, given the evidence you see on your screen. And Trump saying that thing that exists, that came directly from the Epstein estate, didn't happen and doesn't exist. It was also pretty big news when Trump's name first surfaced in some files. But those initial reports, deemed scandalous at the time, are dwarfed by the new reports this week of a possibly illegal DOJ cover-up of these FBI interviews with an Epstein-linked Trump accuser in these files. It's really something. And every time there's been more evidence, more files, and more information, it's gotten worse for Trump. But not just Trump. We follow this story, and obviously something wrapped up with the President of the United States and what looks like an ongoing cover-up by his Justice Department is a big deal. You would start there. You often cover these stories by starting at the top. But if you've watched our coverage, we continue to journalistically report on this wherever it leads, and it has hit many other individuals. You could pull together just the action of the last few weeks, and it's a lot. Powerful people in multiple countries linked to both parties in America, losing jobs, some losing their whole companies, facing legal probes, arrests in England. We keep updating this list, and it's just one way to see part of it in one picture. Right now, I'm going to show you another way to document this. Here is some of the news and the bombshells of just the past few weeks, reported by this and other news outlets in under 2 minutes.
We actually have some breaking news related to Jeffrey Epstein. Former Treasury Secretary Larry Summers is resigning his academic and faculty appointments at Harvard. The latest chapter in an extended fall from grace for the renowned economist over his extensive ties to Jeffrey Epstein.
Billionaire former Victoria's Secret CEO Les Wexner testified today in the House's investigation into Jeffrey Epstein.
Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick was grilled by senators on Capitol Hill today over his appearance in recently released Epstein files.
Fallout from the Jeffrey Epstein files has now reached one of the largest investment banks in the world, Goldman Sachs. The bank's chief legal officer, Kathy Ruemmler, now says she is resigning.
New Epstein fallout. Hollywood heavyweight Casey Wasserman is putting his namesake talent agency up for sale.
Celebrity doctor Peter Attia has resigned as a contributor at CBS News. Documents show he exchanged messages with Epstein even after Epstein's 2008 conviction.
The fallout from the revelations in the Epstein files has now led to a 1 in 400-year event.
Start with breaking news about Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. The BBC understands that he has been arrested on suspicion of misconduct in public office.
Regarding those links with the convicted paedophile, the late paedophile Jeffrey Epstein.
The biggest story in the world right now, that is the arrest of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor.
L'ex-prince Andrew, membre techniquement, membre de la famille royale.
Searches are currently ongoing at Royal Lodge.
There's a maximum sentence of life imprisonment for Andrew.
The first senior royal in modern history to be arrested.
In the past few days, revelations from the release of the Epstein files have nearly brought down a prime minister, implicated royals, and launched investigators around the world into action.
All those developments driven by the Epstein files that Congress forced the DOJ to release. And the pressure continues. A Nobel Prize-winning scientist out from a top Columbia Institute. Bill Gates apologizing for his ties to Epstein while reiterating he never visited the island or joined any wrongdoing. A former governor, Democrat Bob Kerrey, out from an energy company board. And while Trump's secrecy may be all about Trump, former Governor Kerrey is not the only Democrat facing heat for an Epstein link. The new files have ousted a top official for Democratic presidents, as mentioned, ex-Treasury Secretary Larry Summers. He had tried to already step back from the university he once ran, Harvard. But new today, the former boss is out, pushed to resign his teaching post that he had tried to salvage. Summers losing a role that was the capstone of his career, just as Democratic lawyer Kathy Ruemmler was recently ousted from the elite bank Goldman Sachs, mentioned in that montage we just showed you. Those are two people at the top of the Democratic Party punished for their Epstein ties, while Donald Trump and his Commerce Secretary, who lied and was caught visiting Epstein Island by the files, are resisting calls for accountability for them. But they have their own Epstein exposure. And if this were the end of the story, it might look like maybe Donald Trump outran this scandal too. But for many, including the legal process in the UK and elsewhere, this is the beginning. Those pieces of information and arrests and other accountability I just showed you are all in just these first weeks since the new files came out. Now, few people thought Republicans would join the effort to make Trump release the Epstein files that led to all this heat. If you go back, say, a year when Trump was riding high and fresh off his election. And that's just about a year ago. Maybe by this time next year, the pressure could build further. One survivor pressing the contradiction of President Trump avoiding any mention at the State of the Union of one of the most bipartisan sweeping actions Congress has actually taken in this past year.
All of the survivors have been advocating for months. We did help get an act of Congress, a bipartisan vote on the Epstein Files Transparency Act. I mean, that was an accomplishment that every American could celebrate, right? That was never brought up as part of this State of the Union. You know, there were opportunities and they weren't taken, and it is noted.
Trump campaigned on releasing the files. Then he famously, loudly, furiously fought against the thing he claimed to support. And then Congress made him do it anyway, and he released the files. And there was a day or two where he pretended to say he was for that in a very transparent political effort to spin the loss. Didn't really work. I think everyone knows what happened there. And the proof is in the State of the Union, because had he thought that he could continue spinning that, or if he genuinely thought this was a good thing he supported, he might mention it. It was the most bipartisan legal action the Congress took under this administration. It just happened to be against the Trump administration. He's hiding the files, only he can explain why. And he's hiding the fact that they released some of the files because apparently he's not proud of that. This story is not going away. Not for some of the Democrats I mentioned there, who worked with President Clinton and others, and clearly not for the current president of the United States.